just women are in danger, but all marginalized people, where being uniquely different right now might truly be considered a crime. It seems as though we had all slipped into a false sense of comfort, that justice would prevail and that good would win in the end. Well, good did not win this election, but good will win in the end. So what today means is that we are far from the end. Today marks the beginning of our story. The revolution starts here. The fight for the right to be free, to be who we are, to be equal. Let's march together through this darkness, and with each step, know that we are not afraid. That we are not alone. That we will not back down. That there is power in our unity, and that no opposing force stands a chance in the face of true solidarity. And to our detractors that insist that this march will never add up to anything,
Boston Red here with Friday Java, a weekly magazine of political theory, polling, and commentary. It is part of the history called people that make up this fascinating journey. We are part of the Obama network. For that, we make no apologies. What we pledge to do is give you the facts on a bridge to history. What body politics is, the most up-to-date theories of political science and psychology. Stay tuned for this incredible ride. Boston Red, peace out. This is Friday Java from WBRN Radio and on the Boston Red Network. This production is the 25th of May, 2018. A bit of a programming note here as the holiday appears. Memorial Day or Decoration Day will be on Monday. We will still have the Monday morning quarterback and a special program for a Memorial Day and a Decoration Day. Thus, we'll have effectively two programs that date. And our weekend lineup will be the same. On Saturday morning, the week that was, Numbers Man, sometime in between that, the financial program, but we explore the world of macroeconomics. And we will get an open source report out. We were supposed to do that last week, but unfortunately, because of some travel and other things, sort of got thrown on the bin. But we will be looking at that, and we'll look at the open source movement, where it is. We'll talk about alternatives to Facebook. There are some out there, and they need to be explored and explored by more people. Especially this is a season where all of these content providers are giving out privacy notices for their particular enterprise. Twitter, Facebook, you name it, are giving those out. And many of the platforms that we are on have also privacy notes, which effectively are arbitration agreements, and how they affect the First Amendment is very interesting. A situation there, something that has to be grappled with, no doubt about it. And the whole atmosphere of where corporate media is and where the people's right to know is. and that is something that has been hard throughout the American history since 1776. We, of course, had newspapers at that time. We continue to have newspapers, but newspapers are pale these days. Many of them, particularly the hometown newspapers that we used to have in many, many cities, morning editions and evening editions. Now we're lucky to have a morning edition. Some have been driven out of business, but the sign of papers being driven out, not as many now, but in the field of broadcast journalism, and primarily we're talking about journalism that is streamed over the internet. We've had big mergers, and we'll have more mergers on tap, whether it be from the T-Mobile of the world and various other quote-unquote content providers. Disney, several buyers for Disney to take on Disney and where Disney is. Disney, a traditional provider of quote-unquote safe material. So that is some of the things that are happening out there. And very quickly we'll go to the University of Virginia at Charlottesville, the city in which the right wing, alt-right, the white supremacists literally murdered Heather Heyer. We always remember her on this particular broadcast as we go to the crystal ball and its various prognostications and how this political year is shaping up. An issue we won't spend a lot of time on is on the Korean Peninsula. The summit that would have been on the 12th of June is now canceled. It was canceled by DJ Trump. There are various people that offer an opinion there. Dr. Condoleezza Rice, a foreign policy expert, a particular foreign policy expert in Russian affairs, fluent in the language, etc., just basically tweeted that Trump and company were at amateur hour. Well, there's more than amateur hour concerned there. It is a historic battle that has been going on since I was a baby, quite literally. And they now are at a standstill at the 33rd parallel. That's where the village of Panmunjom is now, and that is where the borders are, and the leader of the Democratic Republic of Korea, Field Marshal crossed the border and went into the south. And they had a historic meeting. There have been a number of historic meetings there on that peninsula. One can only think that in the future, as far as negotiations on the Korean peninsula, will be left to the Korean people and the two nations that occupy that and other nations that are on the borders, that being China and the Russian Federation, should be the people to iron out some type of lasting peace negotiation. Now, as far as the alt-right is concerned, I should not, well, they are the alt-right, these neocon types. I was just looking at a book by the center figure, Professor Stefan Holler. He wrote America Alone, and one of the premises of the neocons and neoconservatives that U.S. foreign policy based upon an American exceptionalism, this is Wilsonian foreign policy, should be in the hands of the American nation, and the American nation should go about the world sort of like Rupert Kittling said, civilizing other nations. That is the reason that you have these conflicts on just about any part of the globe that you can think of. If you go into nations on the African continent, you'll find the American troops there, particularly in places like Kenya, in Somalia, and various other nations along the way, particularly in even some of the French domain type of nations that normally you don't find American troops. In fact, American troops have really never been a stay in many of the nations, say Congo, etc., but the CIA has. So now you see them in Togo and various other places, or in the territories around those areas where they are. And of course, obviously in the Mideast. In the Mideast, that is one of the quote-unquote flashpoints, very interesting flashpoints because of the presence of petrol there, the petroleum empire. The Islamic Republic of Iraq is one of those Iran, is one of the big flashpoints there, and that is the reason it is a flashpoint, and it goes back to neocons that Professor Halper, Halper, wrote about Stefan. We'll call him Step. He's been around a long time. He was the fella that literally was involved in an intelligence operation ran against Jimmy Carter when Jimmy Carter was running for re-election. He was allied with certain rogue elements within the CIA, which Jimmy Carter had Stanfield Turner there, and had brought the CIA in from the cold. They fired CIA operatives right and left, and they were getting somewhat of revenge there, working in behalf of the campaign of Ronald Wilson Reagan of California. That is a part of history one has to know. And what is basically happening there from Reagan on, 8 years of Reagan reinforcing parts of the Wilsonian foreign policy. Woodrow Wilson had been the president of Princeton. He was a racist, but at the same time he put together the League of Nations as a predecessor to the United Nations. But the capitalist powers at the time were using this as a cover, as they did in Congo and various other places in Vietnam. There's a very long list of nations that they used, and later under George H.W. Bush, who was involved in the 80 scenario. He was incidentally, the vice presidential candidate of Reagan, and for all 8 years, and he ran on his own and was elected against our own Michael Dukakis, Professor Dukakis of Boston. And then for re-election, he was defeated by William Jefferson Clinton of Arkansas. But that did not end the Wilsonian foreign policy. It continued on this very racist policy centering around the neocons have centered their policy primarily around the Mideast and the Zionists that are there. And those various other operators, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and various other characters of colonial nature. But where the Korean summit fell apart was this Bolton. Now this is the same clown that came up with weapons of mass destruction, a sleight of hand artist. Nothing new there at all. But because these people were not versed in the, as they say, sleight of hand as much as, because in other words, they were caught on the weapons of mass destruction as they caught here. So they came up with the Libyan model. For those that have not, do not recall the Libyan model, that was under the late Colonel Gaddafi, Muammar Gaddafi. Gaddafi was murdered by Western forces, quite literally. What he did was he gave up his nuclear program, shipped it in crates to the nuclear weapons station in Tennessee. And there it was dismantled and decommissioned there at Oak Ridge. Anyway, nonetheless, after that, he was killed, and they were stupid enough to assume that Field Marshal Ohm and his government would follow a model of self-destruction. They will not. There are no idiots out here these days. So thus the whole thing fell apart, and the Koreans have said they are ready to talk. Field Marshal Ohm said he can continue on, but no doubt DJ Trump will not bring this one up. So President Carter, who was speaking earlier at nonetheless Liberty University, who is on the direction of Farwell's son, the Reverend Farwell, said that he could see where DJ Trump could win a Nobel Prize if he could pull this off. Well, there will be no Nobel Prize for DJ Trump at this juncture unless he can get those talks started again and get a summit going there. But he does have an opportunity in the Mideast because it's much more simpler there. People would think it's not, but it is. All he has to do is get an agreement with the Palestinians, which would bring the other Arab countries in the area on board. Once that is accomplished, then you move to the Israeli government, and the Zionists would be much easier to do because the American forces are the ones that keep them literally on the land, period. And he would have tremendous power, have financial power, military power, etc., to hammer out an agreement. Now, what type of agreement it would be, we do not know. But it would be some type of agreement that would give autonomy to the Palestinians. And that it would be a move towards a proper state. And a proper state has land, people, and control it, and military forces. That could all be accomplished with certain guarantees, such as in Sinai and in Golan Heights, etc. They have UN observers there now, but they could actually put in an effective policing mechanism as they did in Kosovo that would keep the two sides, as they say, effectively apart and stop the racist settlements. And this is the whole problem of the Wilsonian foreign policy. It is racist. And it would not have changed under Hillary the Monster Clinton at all. In fact, it would have accelerated. And this is the takeaway from DJ Trump. And where he goes from here, we honestly do not know. We'll talk more about petrol or gasoline prices on a numbers man. But as we said last week, our models are set up to really be activated once the price of crude is at $100 and to the north of $100. Anyway, nonetheless, to the University of Virginia, I think enough for the proprietary, the introductory notes here. This is the primary updates from Tuesday. The key points in this, the California primary, that'll be on June the 5th. The California primary, particularly in election years, national election years, used to be a very important primary. Robert Kennedy won California before he was brutally murdered, and he would have then went on to Indiana. You don't hear about Indiana. He had a very good chance of winning Indiana. Nonetheless, the Democrats are hoping to avoid getting shut out of November by the state's top two-tier primary in multiple districts, and the results should prove a rough guide for the fall. The results from Tuesday did not prompt any rating changes here. The odds of Democrats taking over the House still at 50-50. The Democrats' edge on the generic ballot has weakened in recent weeks. No doubt about that. It has indeed weakened. Let me just jump back over to it. I usually don't do this. But here to get some generic ballot figures here. This is from Reuters, has the Democrats up. This was on Thursday by 3 points, which is usually the margin of error. And from YouGov, the Democrats by 5. And from the Republican House Post, Rasmussen by 1. So you can see these figures are coming down. There's no doubt about that. And nonetheless, back here, Rev. Norman, he is in South Carolina 5. They moved that rating from likely Republican to safe Republican. It doesn't really have very much to do with anything. The House analysis knows that handicapping results in individual seats. It can be tricky, obviously for lots of reasons, including the lack of independent polling in most districts. Yes, the political committees, campaigns, and other outside groups will survey the district, but many of these polls will never see the light of day or will only be leaked to make one side look better than the other. In other words, they're pretty much made-up polls, not necessarily. We're looking for whatever shreds of data we can find as a guidepost. The much anticipated California primary is one of those. Unlike most every other state uses the top 2 primary system to advance the candidates to the November election. That means every candidate, regardless of a party, appears on the same ballot and voters can only vote for one of them. This can sometimes lead to one party getting shut out of the general election. For instance, Republicans did not advance a candidate in the 2016 Senate general election, when now Senator Harris beat now former Representative Sanchez, who was a Democrat. And Democrats got shut out of the general election in a winnable seat in California 31 in 2012, and potentially, but probably not a winnable seat in California 26. That's in 2014. Incidentally, that setup in California was put on the ballot by conservatives and libertarians as one of the state questions, and they went back to various times. Remember Howard Jarvis and his property tax situation. The California congressional Democratic campaign has had to dump $7 million so far into 3 Republican-held Southern California districts. That's 29, 48, and 49, because Democrats are worried about not advancing candidates to the general in one or more of those districts. For instance, in California 49, an open Republican seat held by Darrell Issa, as leans Democrat. Darrell Issa, of course, was at one time the auto alarm king, self-made millionaire, on late-night TV, making it one of the top Democratic pickup opportunities for the whole country. But it would immediately move to safe Republican if 2 Republicans made it through to the top-tier campaign, or safe Democrat if 2 Democrats made it through in that district. With non-profit executive, this is Kari Eastman. She is in Nebraska, beat the ex-representative Brad Ashford. That's in Nebraska last week. That prompted us and others to upgrade the chances of Don Bacon, even though Easton very well could beat Bacon anyway. Yet the party strikes out in 2 top-tier systems, that the party's chance falls to 0%. Beyond potentials for the general election, the 2 primaries also provided something of a preview of the fall, although the 2-party voting in the primary is not a perfect predictor, no doubt about that. Primaries are notorious, usually low voter turnout situations. They have a scatter plot of Democrat two-party voter share in congressional top two primaries and general election. This is from 2012 to 2016, and we'll just say California's used the top two primary 3 cycles. That's back to 2012, and shows the House results for all 53 of the California districts. A lot of districts in 3 elections that have featured top-tier format, 12, 14, and 16. The table excludes third-party candidates and so forth. So I won't really go into that. We'll just append this. The general rule in California is that one would expect the primary turnout to be more Republican-leaning than the general election. The reason is the same reason why one might expect that in other parts of the country, Republican electorate is older, whiter, the two demographic factors that generally predict a more reliable voter turnout. This year we will probably see somewhat smaller, that's from Politico reporting, that 32% of the roughly 650,000 return absentee ballots have been from registered Republicans, according to the nonpartisan California data source, Political Data. Anyway, the turnout, which is outpacing statewide Republican registration, is about 25%. That the primary election likely will be more Republican than the general electorate is an additional wrinkle that could hurt Democrats' chances to advance candidates to November in one or more of the districts. This would be where older Democrats are still around. While in 2012 was a presidential year, the California primary wasn't held until late June, long after Mitt Romney had effectively locked up the nomination. Turnout was 22.5% statewide, and the electorate seemed Republican-leaning, considering that the Democrats' share of the two-party vote increased in nearly every district for the June primary to the November general election. Overall, total Democratic share of the two-party vote grew by an average of about 6 percentage points in each district and a whopping 12 in terms of margin. That's quite a bit of margin there in those districts. 2 years later, Democratic strategists again generally grew from June to November, although not as much as 2012. And not as consistently across the district. There's a lot of reasons for this. In 2014, including the California totals, voters in the state's governor's race fell about 10.1 million in 2010 to 7.3 million in 2014. Despite the weaker turnout, the Democrats did not lose any seats in California, and mentioned above, Aguilar won California 31. Democrats fell off a little, but with the primary and the general elections in 2016, the Democratic primary between Clinton and Bernie Sanders was still going on, and it drove unusually large Democratic turnout in June. The Republican primary was effectively over, and it was not very much for the Republicans to show up. Still, the change from June to November was minimal. On the average, Republicans gained 1.2 share of the vote, and one of the most notable results was the June primary was in California 49. A typical untouchable ICER only won 52.7% of the two-party vote. He won by less than a point in November. That was a district that Clinton carried, and Darrell Issa went into retirement. So this is one of the reasons California is, in most districts, is changing. Otherwise, it should be looking when the results as clues to the fall. Here are a few suggestions. If the combined Republican two-party vote is below 50% in June, the Republicans are clearly on the dog in the fall. One of the Democratic targets, Jeff Dillman, he's been a target for a while, who occupies a seat in the state's competitive Central Valley. Democratic vote in that district is consistently lower in June than in November. And this is some of the older habits that people many times do not turn out for those. Democrats are hoping to target several other Republicans, such as Tim McClintock. And Nunez is in 22, Mimi Walters in 46, and Duncan Hunter in 50. Democrats have not broke to 40% in the combined two-party vote in any of these districts, any of the last three primaries. Of the four 46, who's in 46? Oh, that's Tom McClintock. Anyway, that is probably the best. Evidently, Nunez is fairly safe where he is. It'll be interesting to see what happens there. Let me just skip on down here. In Georgia, we'll talk about that one later. And Miss Abrams there in Georgia. In Texas, we talked about this. Fletcher won out there, our own Laura Moser. In that particular race, Fletcher will face Republican Cumberson. That's Texas 7 in November, a typical Republican district that narrowly voted for Clinton in 2016. In Arkansas, you have Clark Tucker. Easily avoid a runoff, will face a Representative French Hill. In a dark horse Democratic target this fall, we talked about Amy McGrath. She is beat out the Lexington mayor in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. We won't go into her, but odds of Democrats taking on remains 50-50 as Democrats' edge on the generic ballot has dissipated in recent years because we never make the Democrats a clear favor in the House, though we don't have any modifications to our outlook. That is for them. Now let me just this is Alan Averwitz. He's was at the Emory University. He's the Great Alignment, Race, Party Transformation, and the Rise of DJ Trump. He goes back to Glenn Talmadge. Must turn over in the grave on Tuesday. Georgia Democrats chose Ms. Abrams, their party candidate for governor. Not just any African-American woman. Ms. Abrams, the former minority leader of the Georgia House of Representatives, ran as an outspoken progressive, was endorsed by Bernie Sanders and MoveOn.org. Tommy just served as a governor. He was an evil racist in 3 terms in the 30s and in the 40s. Georgia Democratic Party was viewed as a defender of segregation. Following the passage of the Voters' Rights Act, this is very, very important here. Georgia Democrats are like Jimmy Carter. And I wouldn't put Roy Barnes in there, campaigned and governed as moderates and forged what he calls biracial coalitions. In recent elections, moderate Democrats have little success in Georgia. Barnes was defeated in his second bid. That was in 2002. That was when G.W. Bush was after G.W. Bush had stolen an election by this guy, Sonny Perdue, who's the Secretary of Agriculture, an insult. The bad election began a strain of Democratic losses through 2-16 in Georgia. No Democratic president has carried the state since Bill Clinton in 1992. Barack Obama came fairly close to carrying it. The Democratic strategy of nominating candidates who hope to win over moderate to conservative European voters. Jason Carter, he was the grandson of President Carter, and the former president and a candidate for governor, Michelle Nunn, the daughter of Sam Nunn, who was a right-winger there, lost the Senate seat decisively. Well, it wasn't that decisive. I think it was 8 points. Anyway, Abrams has adopted a different strategy, but followed by Mr. Carter and Ms. Nunn and most Democrats who run for statewide office in Georgia. While extorting her success in working with Republicans, while Minority Leader Ms. Abrams emphasizes her progressive positions on, like expanding Medicaid in the state, along with her personal challenges she has overcome as an African American from a family of modest means, rather than focusing on increasing the Democratic share of the vote amongst moderate to conservative Europeans. She emphasized her ability to energize and mobilize young voters and a growing non-European base. Opponent in the Democratic primary was Stacey Evans, who ran as a progressive. In fact, on one major Evans tried to run to Abrams' left, questioning the latter's willingness to compromise there. On the Republican, on the Hope Scholarship, something she wants to bring back, which made more of a difference for African Americans to obtain grants. But Evans, who was a European, claimed that her ability to win larger shares of the moderate to conservative European vote would give her a better shot than Abrams. On Tuesday, the primary voters across Georgia spoke. 76% of that vote went to Ms. Abrams. Ms. Abrams carried 153 of the state's 159 counties. That's a crushing situation there. In November, the first African American and first woman to run as a candidate of a major party for governor will face a winner there, and these are two right-wingers, Casey Cagle and Brian Kemp, the Secretary of State. In the Republican primary, the candidates run as staunch conservatives, emphasizing their support for gun rights, opposition to illegal immigrants, and their loyalty to D.J. Trump. Not in any particular order. Cagle emphasized his endorsement by the NRA and support for sending Georgia troops to the Mexican border, which you don't hear about anymore. Long drought in statewide elections for Democrats, but the state's shifting demographics along with D.J. Trump's own popularity. Now, this is Gallup. Gallup's in the business of the popularity polls, have approval rating of D.J. Trump at only 41%, disapproval at 53%. Very unusual that one recent Survey USA poll has Cagle leading Abrams by only 5 points in the general election, and Democrat turnout came close to matching Republican turnout. Democratic voters made up 49% of those who turned out. Cagle with independents splitting evenly. There's some things that want to happen there. He's political science professor, Dr. Amowitz, is at Emory University, and of course we put the offer there. He's written in various places, and this is from the New York Times. The Washington Post has had, I'm going to change some things around to be a little more correct. Europeans have fled the Democratic Party, and here's how the nation got there. They use the word white, we use the word European to be more exact. With the 2008 midterm elections away in 2020 cycle there, European voters have been fleeing the Democratic Party. The big reason Democrats are looking to rebound from back-to-back losses. And that's been a long situation here. We go back to the Voting Rights Act of 1965, the Civil Rights Act of 64-65. Clinton won 49, this is Wild Bill Clinton, of the European two-party vote in 1996. Al Gore won 43% in 2000, and brother Kerry, John Kerry, 41% in 2004. Barack Obama won a slightly larger share in 2008, but then dropped to 39% in 2012. Hillary Clinton got the same percentage as Barack Obama. Barack Obama was able to mask the Democratic Party weakness amongst Europeans by prompting record high turnouts of African Americans. And new research, we'll go into this later, this poll, I don't have it up now, but I use the American Standard Election Survey to show that many European voters view the Democratic Party as moving forward away from their positions. This is true both when Europeans are asked to assess the position of parties generally and on a variety of specific issues. With actual votes, European voters have split between the two parties 50-50 in the 70s, and it was coming since 2000, a 60-40 in favor of the Republican Party. That just shows the thing of white privilege coming up there amongst these voters, whether it be consciously or subconsciously, or just an ideological situation. This is one of the reasons DJ Trump was able to triumph, but at the same time it was appeal. Malpractice by Hillary the Monster Clinton caused a number of shortcomings, let's just say that. Failure to address the European working class, their concerns in Wisconsin, in Michigan, and in Pennsylvania. They put some money into Pennsylvania, but the campaign was not focused correctly. Bernie Sanders would have done a much better job and would have won those states and would be sitting in the White House. Now, because a percentage, not a majority, of the DJ Trump voters voted for Bernie Sanders in the primaries, and they also voted for Barack Obama. So it shows the kinds of campaigns and the way the campaigns were run. They had crybaby, what was her name, Jennifer Palmieri, was on one of the programs, I won't mention it, H. But anyway, crying about what happened. Well, what happened was she was a communications director that didn't do a whole lot of communicating. And the campaign person that chaired Clinton's campaign was an idiot. So that amounts for some. Let's do the sports now as we roll along here. Roll a little over. We're trying to get our programs down. We'll start with the NBA game. That was the only big game. The Rockets rocket on in Houston, 98-94 over the Warriors. And now they have, as one would say, set up a contest. Houston leads 3-2. If they win the next game, they move on. The Warriors will stay in Oakland. Period. And the same big setup with the Cleveland and Boston, the Celtics and Cavaliers. A picture of Mr. James sitting just reading a book. A good idea. Nonetheless, to the one sport that is about 48 games so far, Major League Baseball, the Pirates and Reds 5-4. It's in Cincy. The Angels and Blue Jays in Toronto, Angels 8-1. The Orioles and White Sox on the south side. It was all Orioles. 9-3. The Mariners and Athletics in Oakland. Oakland 4-1. The Astros in Cleveland. It was all Astros 8-2. The Red Sox in Florida, it was raised 6-3 there. And Kansas City in Texas, 8-2 over the Rangers. And the Mets, the game we tuned into, it was the same as we left the game. Mets shut out the Brewers. Brewers drank too much beer in Milwaukee. Mets had 13 hits and no errors. The Brewers 5 hits and no errors also. So we go along. We'll look at the standings very quickly here. We usually look at this on the Monday night quarterbacks. We have not looked at it lately, so we'll look at it quickly. The Stanley Cup Finals will have Las Vegas and the Capitals of D.C. And we're waiting here on the standings to stand up for us. All right. We'll start in the American League East. Boston's on top. The Yankees are 1 game back. And, of course, Tampa is, 10 games back, and forget it. In the American League Central, Cleveland is on top. And the Twins are 1.5 games back. The Tigers are 3.5 games back. The Royals 8, and so forth and so on. The Sox in the bottom. In the American League West, the Astros are on top. The Mariners are 3 games back, and the Angels are 4.5 games back. Oakland is 6.5 games back, and Texas in the cellar, at 13.5 back. In the National League East, Atlanta's on top, surprising there. And the Phillies are a half game back. The Mets are 3 games back, with the Nationals at 3 games back. The Marlins are in the cellar, 10.5 games back. In the National League Central, I don't know who wants this. The Brewers are on top. Then comes the Cardinals. Then comes Pittsburgh. They are 3 games back. And the Cubbies only 3.5 games back. And, of course, Cincy is 13 back. They've had a horrible season. And in the West, the Rockies are on top. And the D-backs are 1.5 games back. Giants are 2 games back. The Dodgers are 3.5 games back. And the Padres are 5.5 games back. So anyone could win that one. This will do it for us. Hopefully we shed some light on the California primary. We usually have the California, the Fields poll. We'll be getting one in California as we come up closer and closer to that June primary out in California. A vast state, a lot of legislative seats there. And then this 2-candidate thing, that was something put in by the libertarian / conservative Republicans. And that is one of those situations, along with ranked choice, that does not do justice to democracy, period. And then we have various other seats around in primaries. We'll be running those down. We're working on something perhaps of a Sunday called, based upon modem transmissions. The doctor, Professor Nate Silver, wrote a book called The Signal and the Noise. And this is, the title of this one is Too Much Noise, Not Enough Signal. And this is the DJ Trump operation. And we're pointing out there the weaknesses in DJ Trump. And of course, we saw that with the cancellation of the summit. But not only that, the economic program and various other things that are tied either to the foreign policy, domestic policy, this whole idea of tariffs, his latest brainstorm, 25% tariff on imported cars. Well, those things would have worked at one time. Hallie Smoot actually caused a damn depression. Anyway, now it all would depend. There are various foreign companies, Volkswagen, Mercedes-Benz, etc., that Nissan, that are in the U.S., in Tennessee, Alabama, etc. And then how does that affect them? So if you look to Europe, and the European automobile industry, and of course cars say coming in primarily from Mexico and secondarily from Canada. If you put a tariff on them, so what? Automobile sales are down anyway. That destroys some of what is left of the economy. All these things add up. And this whole idea of the so-called art of deal, that was something in the 80s. It doesn't even apply now. It's come up with some sort of fantastic, crazy goal and hope to bargain somebody down. It doesn't happen. They'll say, just forget it. Leave it on the table. Time is on their side. See, this is one of the important things of DJ Trump and his noise and very little signal. Time is really not on his side. The various machinations that he's come up with will actually hurt the economy in the long run, not necessarily in the short term. This is the same thing you have with interest rates, you have with inflation, you have with low unemployment, creating a reserve army of the unemployed. In other words, when you get the figure down below 4% or even at 4.3, people and employers decide there are not any people out there to hire, particularly when it goes below 3, therefore they aren't hiring. And then people stop looking, so the number goes down perhaps to 3.8, even 3.5. Doesn't mean anything. It just means that how many million are left out there are just left out there. We'll see you nonetheless on the week that was, in the Monday morning quarterback on the Boston Red part of the franchise. And on Numbers Man, we'll see you this weekend. And on our technical report, the open source report, we'll see you also this weekend. Have a good weekend, everyone. We'll talk to you on a Saturday morning.